Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's MediaWorks Masterclass. I'm actually really excited about today's session to cover all things around the future of SEO and digital PR. To be honest, I think this comes on the back of lots of conversations with clients and prospects over the last sort of 6 to 9 months, lots of media interest in where SEO and digital PR is heading. We'll cover everything from large language models to AI mode to measurements through to digital PR. So I'm really looking forward to today's session where we're going to look at what's changing in 2026 and ultimately how organizations can stay ahead as they head into the new year. My name's David Norris. For those that don't know, I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at MediaWorks, and I'm the host of the MediaWorks Masterclass. Today, I've got with me 2 colleagues from our SEO team. So, Abbie, we'll come to you first. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Abbie Gubbins. I'm the Senior SEO Consultant here at MediaWorks. I have about 5 years of SEO experience and I work across our Tier 1 clients at MediaWorks across technical SEO, copywriting and working with Rachel's team.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'm Rachel Gray. I've been at MediaWorks 5 years now. I am a digital PR consultant and same as Abbie, I work within the SEO team across a lot of our Tier 1 clients.
Fantastic. So I think you can see we've got a range of relevant experience to cover all things sort of SEO and DPR. What we always say though as part of these masterclasses, which I think is a really positive aspect of what we do, is what we can provide on the back of this. So by all means, all you need to do is click in the chat and register your interest in receiving a free personalized SEO and DPR insights audit, where we'll look at things like what's your current SEO profile and unlocking digital PR insight. I think that's going to be really important when we talk through some of the measurement tools that we've actually got access to that certain individuals or organizations might not have access to or are potentially struggling to grapple with. So as I say, if you are interested, then please do put inside the chat, click on the link. If you're watching or listening on catch up, then by all means as well, you'll receive a follow-up email and just respond to that. And as I say, remember, potentially Abbie, potentially Rachel, or definitely a member of the SEO team will be available to walk you through that audit and look at sort of what we've pulled out for your organization. So I guess, Abbie, I'm going to come to you on this. SEO, right? So again, like search engine optimization, like what is it? Again, most people will know, but in a world where we're hearing about GEO, SEO, I've like heard so many different expressions as we've, had 12 months. SEO.
So as you can see on the screen, obviously SEO stands for search engine optimization. Traditionally, this was just about making your site easily crawlable, making content that was relevant, human-led, and a lot of that still stands. But the way that people are searching now, and especially looking into 2020, changing so much, the conversation now is about how we can make the most out of the content that we're creating, how we can kind of focus on optimizing the right things, making our website is technically sound, and again, just prioritizing kind of our resources in the best way. Perfect.
So I guess that leads us on to, I presume lots of people who are on the call know what SEO is or have an opinion about what SEO is. I guess for us, it's really important, as I say, we're looking forward today. So why search is changing in 2020? What are the big drivers behind?
So obviously there's a lot of conversation now around AI and different LLMs. For anyone on the call, LLM stands for large language models. How they work is they're basically fed a huge range of different data, lots and lots of text for them to consume. Then a user will put in a prompt. It might be an issue, a problem they're trying to solve, or just a point of discussion. And then the LLM will predict what the user wants to hear back, which is generally a very human-led, kind of informative answer that might be a summary, it might be a table, but generally how that user would like to see feedback. The more it speaks to a user, generally the more it learns, so the better those answers then become.
And AI overviews, in a lot of instances, I think people have seen this and they've seen the changing nature of search, and that probably the biggest representation of that has been AI overviews appearing out of the SERP results and the position that they hold.
Yeah, absolutely. So an AI overview, again, a lot of you on the call would have seen, but they are an involvement of Google's featured snippet. They now appear in just over 98% of all search queries. Well, they're not optional. Google will present that kind of no matter what. And they basically take lots of information from lots of different sites and then kind of make that a cumulative answer summarizing what the information is. So if I search for what is the best family car, or what age does, a child need a car seat, it will take lots of information from lots of different sites and put that in kind of a general answer that you can lift from the AI summary.
Up, isn't it, from where we started? If I went back 12 months, I think the numbers that we were seeing were like 5, 6, 7% in the UK. And it's important to say that also this data hasn't also yes, it's moved, but it's also, this is UK specific, right?
Yes.
Because obviously in the States, where we do a lot of work, they're well ahead, aren't they, in terms of all of the rollout, some of the things that we're talking about, versus some other countries. Like I know, for example, France is a perfect example, are way further behind, for example, than the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they Google traditionally, AI overviews obviously is specific to Google. They will always roll out in the US first. They're a US-led company. Traditionally, UK is then the next to pick up, and then Europe kind of slowly after that. So as you mentioned, France is barely there. It's not really surfacing any AI overviews at the moment, whereas like Germany is starting to see a little bit more of that pickup. So it is different across every country.
It's interesting as well, because I read the other day that, like, Scandinavian countries, more sort of on the UK timeline as well, which is quite interesting. Then AI overviews versus AI mode, that's part of the conversation we're having. And honestly, every single masterclass I've done throughout 2025, which I think is over 2025 now, I've talked about AI, but AI overviews versus AI mode.
Yeah, so the AI overview is obviously at the top of the SERP. A user puts in their query into the search bar, they get that AI overview, and then they'll see the traditional kind of blue links after that. AI mode, a user physically has to click onto AI mode. They have to make that decision. AI overviews is just there no matter what. And AI mode is an LLM. So again, a user puts in a prompt, they get an answer back. They can kind of they can go back to that conversation. They can continue that conversation. The LLM can then send them links to different information. They can summarize what they're talking about. And again, they can learn. So it's very different to the AI overview. It still scrapes information from websites. It's still kind of using that to fuel its answers. But it's more human-led. It's more of a conversation.
Okay. And then we are talking, aren't we, about, like, we've talked about this for a while as well, fragmented search coming in. Like, I think typically we will talk about Google first. Again, I wouldn't say that's because we're a Google partner. We are a Google partner, but I think that's because the statistics do still bear out that Google is still the dominant search engine as it stands today. But again, we are seeing sort of it fragment out. And we talked a bit about this on a paid media masterclass about how that whole discovery piece was changing and the discovery landscape was changing. But I think what we saw was actually sort of Google's search queries, etc., was actually still holding relatively flat, but people are now supplementing that with other searches.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're seeing, is that users are generally interested in the issues that they have, and they want to discover, they want to learn, but they're doing that across a different range of search engines now. So instead of just going to Google, putting in a query, getting an answer back, and then either ending their search or converting, they're kind of bouncing around from, Google Lens because they've seen a jumper that they really like, to then a ChatGPT saying, how would I use this in an outfit, to then going to TikTok and watching someone kind of wear that out the house and what coat they wear with it, then, maybe looking at YouTube or looking at Reddit for reviews. So instead of just kind of everything happening in one place, which was traditionally your site, they're bouncing around from loads of different places and using social media as a search engine in a way that we haven't seen before. Yeah,
and that's really interesting to me. That zero-click behaviour is increasing, with 26.1% of UK searches ending without a single click. And that's fascinating, isn't it? Because, again, what that means for a lot of organisations is that seeing like website traffic decrease, but actually conversion rates increase, because ultimately you're seeing more qualified leads end up on the site, which is or qualified prospects, inquirers, etc., whatever the terminology you might want to use there. But I think that is a fascinating sort of change that we're seeing out there. And the conversation we are having is like where people are seeing AI overviews, where people are seeing AI mode, and also like what does that mean for search? And again, I know we'll rattle through this, but like these are just two examples of how they are subtly different, AI overviews versus AI mode. And again, just differences. And what I encourage everyone to do is have a play around with that. Put in a couple of queries, see how it spits out different information. They are pulling from similar sources. But again, it's just a different way of searching, I think, which is quite conversational in AI mode versus sort of AI overviews, which comes from a much more traditional sort of search that we would see.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, AI mode, you can follow up that query. You can say, oh, I don't understand that. Can you explain it differently? Or, oh, that's interesting. Can you provide me some data on that? Or can you provide me a link to that? Whereas an AI overview, again, it's just that summary. Yeah. And that's where we're seeing this zero-click behavior, because the user puts in a question, they get the answer in the AI summary, and they don't need to go onto a site anymore to read passages of information to get the answer. Yeah. So no, it's really interesting looking to 2026.
I guess with changing user behavior, sort of we're seeing that user journey shift out. We're seeing it significantly change in terms of what it was versus what it is, and also sort of probably where it's heading.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've tried to demonstrate this as best as I can on this slide. Again, sorry, it's a lot of points. It's quite convoluted. But the old journey right at the top, you can see, is very straightforward. A user has an issue, they have a query. So I've used like a marketing agency in this example. What does a marketing agency do? They'll then see 10 blue links, probably a few sponsored websites. They'll on average go between 1 and 3 websites to find the information that they're looking for. And they'll either convert or they'll end their search because they've got the information they need. Now they kind of have 2 paths of getting that information. The first is that zero-click journey. What does a marketing agency do? They'll type that into Google, they'll get the information in the AI overview, and they'll end their search because they've got the information they require. This other journey that we're seeing, and something that we'll talk through, again, more towards this masterclass, is this fragmented search, this kind of very convoluted journey, which is a user has a query. So instead of saying, what does a marketing agency do into Google, they might put into their ChatGPT, for example, is their LLM or AI mode. I've got this problem, like less people are visiting my site in November versus April, or what can a consultant help me with? What is a full funnel marketing agency? All of these kind of longer form questions. And they'll discuss that with, again, the likes of ChatGPT over a few different prompts. Then ChatGPT might recommend something. So they might go to TikTok to then explore that a little bit further. Then they might see something on TikTok that interests them. They go back to ChatGPT and they discuss that again. They say, I've learned this. What do you think about this? They then might go to Reddit, because ChatGPT has then said, okay, well, you're based in the Northeast. Here are a few Northeast marketing agencies. They might recommend MediaWorks, hopefully, for example. They then go on to, Reddit to kind of explore more queries around MediaWorks. And then by the time they get to Google, they've done all of their investigating. They've done all of those informational-led searches, and they go onto Google and they say MediaWorks prices, MediaWorks contact, because they're really at that end of the funnel. They're really high intent. So again, we're seeing a lot of this zero-click behavior. We're seeing traffic drop off sites. But as you said, conversions are staying either the same or they're increasing, because by the time they get to your site, they've done all that kind of querying that they need to do.
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting piece here, where I think this is a question, as I say, I've probably answered 20, 30, 40 times, over the last 6 months with clients that we've got, where they're asking us obviously questions around how is ChatGPT and the likes, it's obviously a massive element in the media, usage has gone up. Yeah. How is it actually impacting sort of search and search queries from traditional channels? Because the conversation we're having is, are we now optimizing towards those LLMs versus optimizing towards Google, and how does that change? And I know we'll touch on that as we go through the session today, but I think for me, this the graphic on screen is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it really does paint the picture. I think a lot of conversations we're having is, do we optimize towards this, or it's like they're really viewed as they're in competition with each other. But what we're seeing, again, with that search journey is that LLMs are fueling searches on Google. You'll go to ChatGPT, you'll put in a prompt, you'll want to get some information, like, for example, best family car in 2026. ChatGPT doesn't give you one recommendation, one link, and then you go to that site and you convert. It'll give you multiple options based on multiple scenarios. So you'll take that information and then you'll go to Google with it, and then you'll search on Google for this car, for this car, for this car. So as you can see, over the last 2 years, the average Google search has kind of stayed at around 95%, whereas AI tool visits like ChatGPT, AI mode, Perplexity, etc., they've risen from about 7% to 36%. So we're not seeing any decrease with that. We're not seeing a correlation between one going up and one going down. Yeah. We're really seeing that LLMs are fueling the searches on Google.
Yeah, and I guess then, we talk about like personalization, I think is one of the things that obviously all of the platforms are trying to deliver that more personalized experience, aren't they now, like contextual search, if you like. And I think this is really interesting, isn't it, around like what different people see, although making the same query.
Yeah, exactly. So what we've done here is my search. So for me, I'm renting a house. I've got one big dog, whereas one of our colleagues, the director who searched Jack, he's a homeowner, he's a brand new dad, and he's got 2 dogs as well. We both put in the same prompt, which is we want a big car that has a big boot for our dog. That's it. We didn't give it any more kind of contextual information than that. But you can see that the two results that we get back are really different. So mine, for example, my ChatGPT has included emojis. It's broken it down really simply, and it's given me like a summary at the end. Whereas for Jack's, it's a lot more kind of informational led. You can see, obviously I've had to cut it off with a screenshot, but there was, more bullet points after this, more reasoning. It's included images of the boot size that was mentioned. But most importantly, it's referencing different vehicles. Jack's getting 1 recommendation for Skoda there, whereas I'm getting 3 very high level recommendations for 3 different brands. So again, it's just kind of talking about this conversation piece about the importance of brand signals here. Just because you optimize your page for one user, i.e. a family or a person that needs a big boot because they've got a dog, doesn't mean that you will necessarily be referenced in that search. I think it's just really important about thinking, okay, let's go back to core SEO values. Let's go back to EAT and say, why is our brand trustworthy? Why is our brand authoritative? And making sure that we're constantly referencing that in our content as well.
Thanks very much, Abbie. That was really, really useful. And I think that leads us quite nicely into sort of the DPR piece, Rachel, around like why digital PR has become such an important aspect of that. And I think like for me, it starts with that authority, trust and impact, doesn't it? And I guess it is shifting, isn't it? Like, traditional terms such as link building, it's moved more into brand building and what that means. We've even started talking about coverage versus links internally and having a much more of a balance on that. Whereas 5-10 years ago, it was very much a link race. It's now much more that rounded coverage piece, isn't it, that we're talking about? So I guess what's driving a lot of that is that newsrooms are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, this is really where I want to start off with for next year, is because they're changing so much. Obviously, we've already spoke about AI a lot, but actually how journalists are using it. So AI is already so embedded within the newsroom these days. You'll see even on, news websites you go on, journalists will actually have the title AI assisted journalist now. They're using it, to fact check even, to draft, in the ways that many of us may use it. So that's one thing we really have to be, knowledgeable on. The press room restructure, unfortunately, a lot of journalists are losing their jobs right now. As you can see, Reach PLC is one of the largest commercial news publishers in the world. And this year, they've cut 321 jobs, but they've actually created 135 new digital first rules because they're looking more for, multimedia platform news, video first news, like Abbie has been saying about, people searching on TikTok. That's really where they're going as well. And then also where we've touched on the EET scrutiny, journalists are placing more weight on this, scrutinize like credentials, checking whether experts really exist. I know we were just talking before about how it was such a big talking point this year around, fake experts and AI experts, really placing that authority on, what your brand is, who's speaking for it.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it, to think about and consider how much that's evolved over a period of time and the nature of the way that we are consuming media as human beings, as users, as customers potentially, and the way that sort of Google's had to adapt and newsrooms have had to adapt towards that, because I say in a world where we see probably a lot more fake news, we see sort of, AI writing content, etc. Like ultimately we're trying to whittle that down now. Google doesn't want to see, I know it's been a big conversation in previous ones where again I've had conversations where people have said, oh, I got ChatGPT write all the content on my website. I'm like, whoa, that terrifies the life out of me. And then we often have conversations with the same people 3 months later where it's like, yes, all my rankings have dropped off and I've actually stopped performing, because again, it's that aggregation of content, isn't it, that we're getting out as the large language models versus what we're actually seeing is if you can give it something new, unique, insightful, something different, that's where the gains are to be made. And I guess, what does that actually mean then for digital PR?
Yeah, so really the first thing I wanted to touch on is trust becomes the most valuable currency. Like I just said before, leaner newsrooms, less journalists, they want stories that, feel credible as soon as they read them. They want the data within it to be solid. They want to see an expert and know that is a real person. Following on from that, they want the real expertise, checking whether they exist. We've had examples within our team where journalists are wanting phone calls with these people. They're wanting LinkedIn profiles so they can see their digital footprint and, see that they've actually been a real person. And then authenticity beats volume. Like we've sort of talked before, we're going less down the mass links route and more toward, okay, where are we getting the coverage? We're not mass pitching out to hundreds of journalists. We're, solidly focusing on where's going to get us the best placements for those brands.
Yeah, and I think it's all context relevant as well, isn't it? I really think this is fascinating because, as I say, where we do get the best traction, it's where somebody in that organisation with a track record's being prepared to put their name to it. Yeah. Whereas I think the days have gone of media work state just doesn't work anymore. They want actual people that they can fact check and hold ultimately to account, because that's where sort of real unique insights, real new information comes from.
Yeah.
So I guess the balance between digital PR, traditional PR, something we've talked about. Again, we've done a separate masterclass on that. But again, sort of, how does it all work together?
Yeah, so really looking towards next year, and what we've sort of been doing this year even really is trying to bring that what we'd see as an old traditional PR world, of, getting, news about events out there, about products, brand building, boosting, their visibility within that space, not necessarily focusing on, the SEO and the keywords, but actually how that really helps LLMs understand your brand now and bringing that with the visibility that digital PR has to then build this holistic sort of strategy. So we do have the credibility coming from, the traditional PR, those experts, like we've talked about, getting their names out there, but also the digital PR that we're still then building through keywords and through the SEO strategy to still build that visibility.
Yeah, and I think that, as you say, it's sort of becoming much more of a hybrid, isn't it? Where, I know we got to a point almost 5-6 years ago where it felt like traditional PR was over here, digital PR was there, but it is sort of mentioned right in the middle, which I think is fascinating. And again, sort of, here's a question around sort of why the best X, whatever that X is, do you know what I mean? Whether that's a product, whether it's a service, roundups matter for AI and LLM visibility.
Yeah, I really kind of just wanted to put this in an example as one of the best ways that LLMs are actually taking information we're putting out there. So as you can see on here, I've gave examples from real world news stories around, the best washing machines, best toner pads, best family cars, and how that LLMs actually and AIs actually prefer this more structured content. They can crawl these websites and, say that your washing machine's been featured across, 20 different placements on 20 authoritative websites. AIs are going to crawl that and then be like, oh, okay, this has been mentioned so many times within these best recommendations. So then when people come to search for, the best washing machine for, my family, it will start to come up within those searches. So this is one thing I kind of just really wanted to put into touch on, just to give a real world example and show how it's actually working.
Yeah. And again, I think that leads into this piece really around data.
Yeah.
So for me, sort of data journalism, the platforms being hungry for that data has been like increasingly important.
Yeah.
So I think some of that statistic on the right is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I love the statistic from the State of Media report this year. Around half of journalists want to see data before they'll even consider covering a story. And as you can see, this is what we do. We have a central bank of data where, we have FOI, freedom of information findings, trend analysis, expert insight from, our actual own clients' data that they take and give to us, which, we can have multiple angles from multiple news stories. Why journalists like it is obviously, the numbers are up to date, they're easy to read, it's what they want.
We're all hungry, aren't we? For
yeah.
Like, that's the thing for me, like, I love like 32% of people say
yeah.
so 48% of people think that. We all love it, don't we? I don't know, bizarre consumer world within it.
But yeah, it's, the journalists know that's going to get the clicks, it's going to get the reads, so that's why they want it. But then also we can then bring it back to our SEO strategy by housing this data, on site within blogs or its own landing page. The journalists will reference that as the source of the data they're using, and then it just brings that authority back through to the website and back into the SEO strategy.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads us nicely into measurement. I'm conscious we've got like last 5 minutes, so I want to cover sort of measurement and then essentially a bit of a summary. But I guess from a measurement perspective, it has sort of got a bit more challenging, and the platforms are trying to play a bit of catch up, aren't they?
That's exactly it. I mean, obviously, in the SEO world, we've been talking about these transformations over the last 12 months, but it's a massive change to how we measure. So again, a lot of these brands are going to be quite recognizable to most on the call. We've got Sistrix, SEMrush, and Ahrefs. This is an actual screenshot from one of our clients, kind of depicting how many AI-enabled keywords are being ranked. So you can see the massive discrepancy between these three tools. Yeah. Sistrix is identifying over 108,000. You've got SEMrush with 73,000 and Ahrefs only 20,000. Yeah. So you can see, again, they're really trying to kind of add more metrics and trying to allow users to play around with what data they can get, but the reliability is not quite there at the moment.
Yeah, because I think for these platforms and tools, if you're trying to do it across the website, the volume of data required to actually feed all of that, the expense of doing that is absolutely enormous, which leads us into, again, some basic tooling that we've been working through to simplify that, where actually some of the reporting that we've got access to as an organisation probably outstrips some of the platforms now in terms of being able to give very specific oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most helpful tools that we have. I do apologise. It's an ugly slide. I've had to redact it because, again, this is a real screenshot of one of our real clients. But what you can see on screen is a kind of a culmination of all of the different data points that we can get around AI overviews and AI mode. What our internal DMC does is it refreshes this data every week. Most of the SEO software out there, like Ahrefs, SEMrush, they refresh it once every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, every 5 weeks. So it's a lot more accurate, a lot more up to date. The reason that we prefer using the internal DMC is that it only focuses on those kind of like high intent keywords, the ones that we're actually tracking. When we kind of onboard a client, we do a big keyword research piece. We then filter those keywords by the ones that we want to go after. Yeah. And these are the ones that we're seeing in the internal DMC. Yeah. So even if you go onto, Ahrefs, for example, you put in your domain, there's always keywords that you rank for that you're not really interested in. If I'm an investment bank in London, I'm always going to rank for things to do in London, even though I'm not providing that service. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, we get these kind of huge discrepancies between the data because different software measures different relevancy. Whereas with the internal DMC, it's only measuring those keywords that we actually want to rank for. So you can see here, in our internal DMC, it's only pulling 4,000 AI overview triggered keywords in comparison to the 2070 and 120,000 keywords in the last slide. Yeah. But we know that we really care about these keywords, so we're tracking them for a reason. We care whether we, dip in visibility or if any of that changes.
Cool. And I guess for me then, when we're looking at sort of measuring SEO output in 2026, it does focus, doesn't it, on sort of visibility now happens inside answers, not just rankings.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that we can have conversations with if people sign up for the audits. It's definitely something that we can get into on a client-by-client basis on how we measure this output. Because as I said, it's changing so much. You kind of do need to be bespoke. But generally speaking, we're kind of shifting away from this page ranks in this position for this keyword and kind of tracking that on this minute scale, but actually shifting to, okay, this passage in this piece of informational content is being cited here, here, and here. It's being, used by ChatGPT. It's also being used by AI mode. I can see it's being pulled into an AI overview. That is now becoming more important, being in lots of different places at once, providing value in lots of different platforms. That is where we're going to see, the contribution to the funnel. That's where we're going to see that end result rather than just ranking in position one.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it, that in terms of strategy shifting from ranking pages to actually feeding the model now and being able to monitor and regulate how it's feeding the model, which I think is really fascinating. When it comes to digital PR then, again, we're thinking about this all the time, but sort of link volume is not a meaningful measure of success anymore. We do see that. And again, in a lot of the audits we provide, we'll be saying to clients, look, yes, it matters and it's something to consider, but it's not the whole game anymore at all.
No, it really matters on getting, those placements within authoritative websites, ones that are actually relevant. You don't want a story about cars being on a food website. Google knows that looks dodgy, but, it's just not going to work anymore. Authority signals carrying more weight. SEO performance is now shaped by brand strength, the expert presence that I've been talking about, the relevance and the credibility of sites that reference you. And then, the visibility across trusted media accounts, like I was talking about, those best reviews, they're on what's going to be picked up by LLMs, and they're going to be really, the good things to get into next year.
Fantastic. And again, then a bit of a summary really from us is the things to think about in 2026. So building trust with journalists, traditional PR and digital PR are converging, AI mode versus AI overview, the change and shifts in user behavior, which will continue to evolve, I'm sure. And then how personalized answers will reshape search, I think is absolutely fascinating. I'm conscious of time. I think that this has been a honestly really insightful masterclass for anybody out there. Hopefully it's given everybody lots of food for thought. And what I would finish by saying is, if you want to discuss any of these elements, which we're more than happy to jump on calls and talk to people about, then please do sign up for your free personalized, and when we mean personalized, tailored to your organization, to your particular industry, in your particular context. We've just talked all about how context is key, right? So I think if you want to talk about any of these, then please do click sign up to receive a free personalized insights audit in the chat. And I think all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for your input. It's been absolutely fascinating. It's got me really excited thinking about what 2026 is going to look like for SEO and digital PR. So thanks, Abbie. Thanks very much, Rachel. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the next MediaWorks Masterclass when I'll be back in a couple of weeks, I believe. But thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.